Welcome to DJNTV and Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. Now introducing the one and only Ben Stowe.
Yeah, baby! Yeah. You know what would be really cool is if there would be this opportunity to learn about lighting and audio, and maybe it would be something that people could do on Tuesday nights, and it would beam right into their living rooms. Wouldn't that be so cool?
That would be cool. We should do that.
We should do that. We should really, really do that sometimes. And the only thing that would be better is if they served mini waffles to us.
If waffles don't show up in the next 15 minutes, John, I'm walking. I just want you to know my agent will be in touch.
Yeah, I remember the good old days when we used to have mini waffles. It was great. It was like so last week. The mini waffles.
Mini waffles.
Mini waffles.
Yeah.
Welcome to Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. This is where all of the information from last week was given to you 3 or 4 months ago, but you didn't watch the first time, so you had to go last week and have mini waffles.
You kind of lost me, but I think you're referencing the symposium.
Yeah, I am all the way around.
It seems like more than 3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah, it really wasn't that long ago. It just seems like it when you got to get back to work and you got to dig out from being gone for a few days.
Well, and I lost my voice, and you can tell it's sort of struggling now. It's not quite back. But
so it might be
lost it. Yeah. So anyway,
sock puppet night. This is going to be great.
You know what would make my voice better? Mini waffles.
Mini waffles with an ice cream chaser. It'll be great. It will be excellent.
Day 4 had a lot of talking, so thank you. Thank you. Much appreciation to the people that I had calls scheduled with who had booked calls in advance and were gracious enough to postpone and allow me to reschedule. So,
yeah, for those of you who didn't catch last week's little segment we did, we were there. We were down at the Electro Voice headquarters with the Lighting and Audio Symposium for 4 days, lighting, audio. And it was a great learning event, I think is what it was. And as Ben has referred to in the past, this is truly one of those events. It's like drinking from the fire hose. It isn't just a little sip
so
here,
much so fast,
a little sip here and a little sip there. I mean, just to give you an idea, is that you've got one of the guys talking about Show Express during the lighting segment time, going through and how to do it and teaching and this is a guy who knows the back end way more than probably everyone else in the world. And he's going through it at a really fast clip as far as I was concerned. Well, maybe not so much, but and the only one in the room that was really staying with him was my 14-year-old son. It was like, yeah, oh, that's so cool. Now what can I do with it? Oh my gosh, this is so cool. And there were like those of us over 25 were like, can you go back to when you started, when you like, okay, click on the icon to open up the program. Okay, yeah, right after that, you lost me.
I think it's different people are going to get different things at different times, and it was really great to see you and your boys there, John. It was awesome to have you. Kind of fun. We sort of did an impromptu live Tuesday night with Ben Stowe, just because you're asking questions in the audience, and I pointed out, I said, how great it is on the show that you do these things to sort of keep me on the rails, and how truly rewarding it is to see people come back. I don't want to, call anybody out by name unless they want to be called out. But I don't think Terry will mind. She came back. This is her second year, and she said, I got so much more out of it this year than I did last year. I think that's the point. That this is a process. This is, something that takes time and it takes repetition. And it was really rewarding for me that somebody would come back. And Brian Kelman has been to every single one of them.
Yeah, a couple of people have been to numerous ones. Of course.
Yeah, I think, and again, sorry, Brian, if you didn't want your name mentioned, but I think it should be. You should have like a badge of honor for that.
For sure.
Every single one. But it's there's that repetition. Unfortunately, like we had said, that there's no current plans for another. Certainly, I'm not done teaching. Obviously, I'm going to continue here with Tuesday night, with you, and as long as you'll have me, so to speak, and other things. But never say never. I mean, who knows? I'd like to see something like it come back, but. For now, there's no plans for another. Speaking of attendees, another one who came to many attendees, Alan just texted me and said that a Sugar Factory shake would probably help my voice.
Yeah,
you're not. I'm willing to chance it.
I think that we've got to take it for the team there, and definitely try that out.
We have a new intern that's starting for the summer at Dental Effects, and she is just 18 years old, and she was at the symposium. And after it was all done, and we thoroughly melted her brain there. Then we took her to Sugar Factory, and we tried to wreck what was left of her. So she's learning this is not a business for the faint of heart,
Oh,
So
funny. Yeah, she was back there kind of taking notes and following along and doing well, considering it's like, I don't know how much experience in the field that she's
little.
had. So this was
Very, very little. This was very exploratory, and obviously the symposium is not, like I said, for people, day one, right?
Yeah.
But it was good. Yeah, I think she left much better informed, much stronger, and I think what a great way to kick off an internship. I mean, and she left excited, which is nice. Yeah, anytime you can be put through the gauntlet like that, and you can have your brain stretched and challenged, and feel excited about it, I think that's a testament to the presenters we had, and I think it's also a testament to her character. So.
Yeah, Ben, it was good to be able to chat with her a little bit during the show there, and having that younger perspective with things is always kind of neat, from those of us who are a little bit older and don't see things, through that same enthusiasm when there's something, unusual, in that lighting world specifically, that they're like, whoa, that's really cool. How'd they do that? Yeah, sometimes we get a little jaded as we get older.
I will admit it was hard to. We of course had the great experience with our attendees to take them to First Avenue and play Purple Rain for them on the stage where Prince recorded Purple Rain. One, I was reminded how cheesy '80s movies are, but two, just staying up that late was getting hard. I was like, I gotta teach the next day, Anyway, it was good. It was worth it. It was totally worth it to share with the attendees.
So now we've got hot tea and apple cider vinegar for a day. People they're concerned for you, Ben.
I appreciate you.
And that they're giving you some remedies. All right, let's jump into tonight's topic. We want to talk a little bit about DSP, because this is something that has been a big topic amongst mobile entertainers, and then it kind of drifted away a little bit, and every once in a while it comes back and it becomes a big topic. So I really just kind of wanted to dig into this for those who have, like, what is that? That kind of a situation, or have never utilized any of it in their whole career as an entertainer. Let's just start at the beginning. What is DSP?
Well, I think everybody has used it on some level, even if you don't know you did. And we'll get into that in a bit. But DSP stands for Digital Signal Processing. And I think we could probably take the D out for a minute, and we could just go back to the good old days of analog signal processing. And really just talk about it in terms of signal processing at its core. So I've got some examples. I threw together a little PowerPoint that we can kind of pop up here and sort of bop around in and look at, like, what are the various kinds of things you would process and why. And then, of course, now all that's being done digitally, and that has made the process much easier and much more available to everyone. So
let's even, so you're in the analog world. I mean, was there a time where live sound or sound, some of the early sound systems didn't have virtually any kind of processing? It was just straight amplification, and there was nothing for, or was the advent of reverb or a few different processing capabilities, was that something that was designed about or developed about the same time as amplification for microphones?
There was probably a time very early on when a lot of that didn't exist, but it's such a necessary component if we think about even passive analog signal processing, like a passive crossover network inside a loudspeaker. We could really break this down and say there's all kinds of things like that. Now, reverbs and plate and other types of effects maybe didn't exist in their current form. There's great stories of recording engineers putting microphones at the top and the bottom of a silo, to try to create in the acoustic space what we could not yet synthesize. And then, of course, as time went on, we became able to synthesize effects and things like that. And you didn't have to have a silo to have, reverb or whatever. You didn't have to have a plate, a physical plate, to have a plate reverb, Are there or were there systems that people were using without any signal processing? Yeah, absolutely. Even some of my first systems were just amplifier and speakers. Now, inside the speakers, there were passive crossover networks and things like that because there were multiple drivers. But certainly there are some real benefits to active crossovers and multiply, amplifying a system, biamping, triamping, that sort of thing. And that's really readily available kind of to everybody. And then of course the flavorful processing, things that we would do, like you mentioned, reverb or that sort of thing, or other alignment things like delay, which we'll talk about, I hope. It's become so much available at your fingertips simply because processing power is so great.
Sure.
We can put these things into components for pennies of what it used to cost, and everybody now has access to it.
Yeah, I like hearing some of the old stories, and every once in a while I used to catch this little clip of how they used to make sound effects, and not that that's a complete, but I mean there's much of that creativity. How do we make it sound like the car is rolling down the hill or whatever, or from an. And
like
utilize
radio shows, or even like Hollywood, where with a punch they're crushing walnuts to get that crunch sound from real punches don't sound like that. I know I've been hit, but anyway, it's I was thinking about, even now there are some purists who really want to produce these things in the actual analog realm. There's a story of a studio that I was visiting that's run by some friends, and they Kings of Leon had recorded a record there, and they were tracking drums, and this is as the story goes, as we were talking about, the campfire, so to speak, that apparently they were tracking drums and whatever. And anyway, one guy went to the bathroom and came running back out. Bring the drums in here. It sounds so good in the bathroom. Like, this has the right sound in here. Get them all in here.
What we want.
So they tracked allegedly, I don't know, but allegedly they tracked the drums in the bathroom, So who knows?
And that could be. I mean, just in Michael doing some recording and things here, he's moved around into different spots, and he finds this weird little angle,
Totally.
Yeah, and that worked and gave him the sound he was after.
And that's, to the people who care about sound, and I mean, we all should care about sound, but I think, when you're an artist and you're trying to create a particular sound, there's something you almost feel more than anything, when you know it, right? And sometimes it's, the rest of us are like, I don't know, it sounded the same to me, but the people who know what they're looking for when they hear it, that's what they got. So.
So let's jump into some of those slides there, and you showing some of the back the analog versions and the history there.
All right. Well, I want to say too that I put this together with kind of some general thought of the order we might do this, but maybe not. So we might jump around a bit, So y'all just have to kind of lead the train here.
Yeah, we'll be good.
So I thought I would break it down into two categories, and this is a real oversimplification, but of what signal processing is. And you'll notice that we have two PEQs here, which stands for parametric EQ. And you would say, why do we have two? And sometimes we'll have three, but one is what we will say we are using for the room. And this is on a speaker system, basically, not even to take into account what we would do for a channel, which is why we might have three, or more. So we'll just say that this one is to align our system as it's configured and to address room issues with EQ, that sort of thing. But then on the other section here, we can say speaker processing. We can say there's another parametric EQ. Typically, this section we wouldn't touch because it's specific to the loudspeaker. Manufacturers should provide like presets and things that can be loaded, or you would set it for the loudspeaker and it's not going to change, including the crossover, which we'll see here soon, FIR. I'm going to spend just a minute on FIR, and then limiters. So anyway, I just thought, well, this would be kind of a good jumping off point. So let's jump into what some of these things are really quick. The first thing is here we can see a parametric EQ, and what I have my PEQ doing right now is a high pass, which you can see is that, let me turn on some annotations here so I can make some drawings. We can see that this basically starting here, it's cutting the low frequencies, which is allowing everything above that frequency to pass. So that would be a low cut or a high pass filter. And we can see this particular one is 12 dB per octave, and it's at 100 hertz, but that's not at all important for the example. Parametric EQs also allow us to add bell filters. So I could add on, let's just say this filter right here, I could decide to add a nice wide boost
And because of me going last week, I know that that boost would be beneficial if I wanted to bump the vocal range, because that's where many of the vocals on the microphone come in.
Yes, I probably wouldn't boost it right there because that's probably hovering right around 400 hertz, which would be sort of the bottom end of the vocal. If you want to boost some vocal presence, I'd probably maybe
Bump up
go
there?
somewhere in here, but moves for a reason. And that's one of the nice things about, a parametric EQ is you can see the frequencies here are not fixed. I can take this dot and I can move it in either direction.
Sure.
And I can choose how narrow or how wide I want my boosts or cuts to be. Thus, I am adjusting the parameters. This is really hard to write with a mouse. Parametric EQ. So we can see how we get that from a parametric. So that would be a parametric EQ. All right. Let's stop annotations so we can advance our slide.
And many of that capability, or the parametric EQ, some of the cabinets that we can purchase have a variation of that you can manipulate from the back menu.
You're getting ahead of me, John.
I mean, it's a lovely day outside. I wonder if there's ice cream served to you on this trip.
I hope so. I hope that's code for I just texted your wife and she's bringing you ice cream. Better be.
Yeah, I'll try. Yeah,
Waffles.
I don't know if I have that kind of pull. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So here we can see this is an example of a delay. And this particular processor does allow us to pretend we are traveling in time, but in reality we cannot. What it does in essence is it would simply delay everything else if we tried to move forward in time.
Okay.
But in reality, we're just going to delay, like for example, this loudspeaker we're delaying by 44.41 milliseconds, which by no coincidence works out to 50 feet. So this processor we can put in 50 feet. It's usually about 0.89 milliseconds a foot, and it's doing the math for us. And it says, okay, well, that's fine. If you want to delay this speaker by 50 feet, I'll take care of that for you. And you might say, well, why do you want to do that? And I'll say, well, stay tuned. So
we had a wonderful example of that last week, but we'll stay tuned.
Okay. We'll learn after the commercial break.
Yeah.
So here we can see an example of why we might want to delay. Let's say that we have a really long room and we have two speakers covering the room. The distance between these speakers will cause this speaker to arrive to our stick figure before this speaker does. So at this point, they will then hear the sound twice. And we'll just pretend that's 50 feet, which is 44 milliseconds, give or take. So they will hear that sound twice, 44 milliseconds apart. And we don't want that. So what we will do is delay this one. Say, you wait 44 milliseconds. It's actually 44.1 if I remember correctly. But you wait until this guy has a chance to catch up. And then you can both go. And thus the delay allows for total coherence. You hear the signal only once. So that's where we might use a delay. Moving on.
Yeah, that is. I've never actually done that myself with it. I mean, I've got the capability with my ATX speakers and different things, and now the Evers, but I haven't done it. And the demonstration of that Dussault did with that was really eye-opening on how effective it can be and how needed it is.
It was really pronounced, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. It was very, very impressive. It's like, ooh, after that, it's like, I'm going to go and just start doing that all the time.
It makes such a big difference, and I think it's one of those things where if you don't know, you don't know, and if you've never done it, you know until you experience it. And I think it's one of those things that once you do, you can't not do it. It's just never going to sound right again.
Yeah.
Every other time you're going to hear that delay and you're going to go And then you're going to know how to fix it. And then you're going to want to fix it. And then you're going to go, that's better, you know?
And there have been times where thinking back to it, I've heard that delay and I just thought it was a room thing. And it's the room and that's why, you know, I was experiencing exactly, and the speaker placement was similar. And so one more tool in that toolbox.
Absolutely. And this is a crossover, which I'm going to talk about in a second, what the crossover part does. But what I want to point about real quick here is also this crossover in this particular DSP. This is a digital one. This has for us an alignment delay. So we can align our tops and subs or whatever, for example. So we could use the other delay as a system delay and this as a component delay.
Sure.
Pretty wild. Let's take a look at a crossover.
Hang on. That would be needed in a situation, because we talk about this when it came to subwoofer placement. If we would put our subs back behind us against the wall in that corner that we always talk about, that would become a needed feature.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can, excuse me, you can see that this is our subwoofer here, you know, at 100 hertz. And then you can see our crossover here for our high frequency box. So we could delay that high frequency box back to the sub in this particular setting. So, yeah, which is pretty cool. All right. So let's move on. And I literally made this slide at about 6:30 tonight. So it's probably new future material you'll see in one of my live presentations, but you saw it here first.
Nice.
Yeah, got the scoop, John. So what we can see is that my incoming signal is full bandwidth. We're just going to say that my incoming signal is all of 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Okay. The problem is my tops only reproduce 100 hertz to 20 kilohertz, and my subs are only going to do 20 hertz to 100 hertz. So how to get everybody to do their job? Well, that's where a crossover comes into play. And by no coincidence, I color-coded these to match the speakers.
Nice. This is big time in here.
Yeah, I've worked hard on this.
Yeah.
It's been a solid 2 or 3 minutes. So you can see that this one is cutting off all the frequencies below our crossover point, which is 100 hertz. And this one is cutting off all the frequencies above 100 hertz. And here we have a typical old school IIR, infinite impulse response crossover. So analog crossover or not so modern digital crossover. And that has these fairly wide, 12 dB or 24 dB per octave slopes.
Sure.
When we get into FIR, I'm going to show you a brick wall crossover, which at higher frequencies, FIR, which is finite impulse response, allows us to do and dramatically improves our coherence. So anyway, there it is. There's the example for what a crossover is. It helps every speaker to do its job, to focus on its specific frequency range and stay in its lane. So here we can see FIR. And what we'll notice right here, if we get into, I'm going to get my annotations back on. If we look right here, we can see that crossover point, but we can see these crossovers down here are very slopey. But these crossovers here are brick wall. They're like right there, boom. In fact, that's what we call that. We call that a brick wall crossover. And that, now when you see the other things, if we click this show result button, which this is just a picture, so I can't do it, what you would see in the end, and there are 4 drivers in here. It's a 3-way top and a sub.
Okay.
You would see this incredibly flat, smooth response for the system. Pretty wild. There are a couple things to keep in mind here. We're not going to spend a lot of time on FIR, but you'll notice that we have a phase button and a magnitude button.
Okay.
And whenever we change, whenever we EQ with an IIR, we will also affect phase. And FIR allows us to not do that, and it also allows us even to correct phase. And that's another topic for another day. And those who saw Ethan's presentation, you know why. But again, here, we can have these brick wall crossover points and very precise, linear phase processing for systems, and it has improved the sound quality of systems substantially just by the way we can process them. So,
and having those basically those strong cutoffs like that, the brick wall, as you referred to it as, that really is going to stop the potential of having any frequency interference between your mid and your high
absolutely
pieces. So it really makes a much more efficient and a more cohesive box.
Yeah, IIRs basically ring infinitely, and FIRs do not. That's thus the definition: infinite and finite. You know, but yeah, it allows for that. Again, those brick wall crossover points. It's harder to do at lower frequencies, processing power and whatnot being a thing. It's less meaningful too. It matters less. So we focus on the high frequency.
Yeah.
A couple of things we did not see in that initial slide. It would be compressors and limiters. Sometimes we do see these in loudspeaker systems. We want to limit our system, prevent it from, exceeding a peak. This being a peak limiter here. Whoops, get to gates in a minute. Sorry. But then we can also see this is an RMS compressor. There are different types of compressors, but this I would typically use on an input channel, sometimes on an output channel, especially if you're mastering or whatever. But I would use this on an input channel, and there are lots of different ways we can use compressors. We can use them artistically to shape sound on drums, or we can use them to control transients. All kinds of different ways we could use compressors. But basically what happens in a compressor, being quick here about this, is once my threshold is met, instead of my signal continuing on the trajectory it was on, I'll try to draw that better here. If my signal kept on going, it would just keep getting louder. We say here, we're like, well, once you get that threshold, you can still get a little bit louder, in this case by a ratio of 2 to 1, but not as much louder. If we change that ratio to 4 to 1, it would be down here maybe. Oh no, it's too steep. It's hard to draw with a mouse, y'all, sorry. So, and anyway, and if we had an infinite ratio, it would be here, right? Which is basically a limiter is like a compressor with an infinite ratio.
Sure.
That is a grossly oversimplified way of thinking of that. But that's kind of what happens. Once you reach this threshold, the signal cannot get any louder. It cannot have any more amplitude. A lot more to it than that, but that's where today's lesson is. So. All right, we are blazing through this. Here. Let's see.
I'm getting questions lined up, so we're good.
Oh, good. Yeah. So a gate works really kind of the opposite. Until the signal gets loud enough, it can't pass. It's like if you were to push on a gate and you didn't push hard enough, the gate won't open. Push hard enough, the gate will open, and now your audio can come through. So this would be a way of sort of having an automatic mute button. We can get rid of stage sounds and things that I don't want. And I might adjust, sometimes you can adjust, the range of a gate too. So it's it's a little more gradual, it's not quite as straight up and down like this one. But anyway, this is all very 101 today. So. So let's take a look at how we would have employed these things in a system in the good old days.
Yeah, good.
We would have our microphone, and it would go into our mixing board, and then that would come out of the mixing board into our EQ, and then from our EQ into our compressor. Now, by the way, there's an age-old argument, which we're not going to have today, about whether you should have EQ first or, whether we should have EQ first or dynamics first. And in fact, on my console, I even have a button I can press that will flip them. So I can put the dynamics before the EQ before the dynamics. And again, we're not going to have the discussion today. So anybody's thinking about asking the question, don't. But I'll just say, think about this. If you were to make a 6 dB boost on your EQ, that requires 4 times the power to present a 6 dB boost at that band. So, when I'm thinking about my overall gain structure, I'm going to think, do I want my compressor before my EQ or after my EQ? And that we're not going to get into the why, because that's a deep whatever. So spend all night talking about it in the chill room with Jay and Howie and all that, but we're not talking about it here. So in this case, we got my microphone into the mixer into the EQ into the compressor, and then out to my amplifier. This is a plain old dumb amplifier. Signal goes in, signal goes out to my loudspeaker, my passive loudspeaker. This is very, very similar to the rigs that you and I ran back when we were kids.
Yeah, I think I've recognized, maybe 2 of those pieces, if not 3, I think I had.
Yes. Now, there's something else this compressor, could also be on an input stage between the microphone and the mixer. And that would be like we were talking about using it for drums or vocals or that sort of thing. So in this case, we're talking about system processing. So that's another place I kind of wanted to point out. Like, well, maybe that would also be here. Maybe we have multiples. But look, y'all, it's just going to keep it simple today, okay?
Oh, all good.
So, and then along came DSP, where instead of having lots of outboard boxes, we had one outboard box, and it did a lot of things. And we can see on this outboard box, I've got a parametric, I've got a graphic EQ, I've got a delay, I've got a polarity. I've got all kinds of good stuff I can do here to process my signal out before it gets to my amplifier. So, again, crossover, those kinds of things would all be done in here. And then our amplifier started to get DSPs built in. And so we took out another box. All that now lives inside the amplifier. So here's my microphone and my mixer and my amplifier. And this is a current model, which has all these things built into it. So one less box, and prices didn't really go up. So that's other than they all went up for everything else over the last 2 years. But so that's a win. And then into our loudspeaker. And then our signal chain got even shorter because we started putting the amplifiers inside of speakers. And as you said, there are speakers you can buy that have DSP on board. And they all have some DSP on board if it's an active speaker. Some of it you can configure, some of it you cannot. Some of it you can recall presets. I'm running at full range, or I'm running it with a sub, or I'm running it with this sub or that sub. And some even have the ability to have EQ and things on board as well, parametric, that sort of thing. For clarification, this particular EQ is not available in the speaker that's pictured with it. So just clarifying that. The ETX does have a parametric on board, but it's not accessible via the app. This is from an eVerse. So just wanted to say, in case anybody, felt I was, misleading you here, you're looking, why can't I find that in my ETX? Because it's not there. But it does have a parametric on board, and it does have lots of different EQ presets and delay and that sort of things on there that you can access and do. And it all lives now inside the speaker. All right. So, Marvelous Mystery Tour time. I don't remember what the next slide is, so let's find out. Oh, yes. So Live Sound World. Here we can see an old analog desk, and some, artists or engineers really love the sound of an analog desk, and it's hard to argue with that, honestly. There are a few. And we thought it was funny with the "Yes, I do know what all the knobs do" shirt, because there's all these knobs on an analog desk. Everything has to have a knob. You don't have menus. You got knobs. There's knobs everywhere, So, anyways.
So what would be their preference for the analog? Is it just because of the tactile feel, or is there an audio difference, or is the difference you can pick up in the audio sound?
Well, you'd have to ask them. You could ask Wayne here and see what he says. I think they're going to tell you that you can hear a difference. I think engineering is a series of pros and cons, but I think it depends. I think that there probably is a sound difference.
Okay.
But I prefer digital desks. I prefer the size. I prefer the versatility. I prefer the functionality. Here we can see another analog desk. Really awesome old Paragon desk, built in like 1991, still on tour. But the problem with that is for all the other things that you want to have, your dynamics and that sort of thing, you've got to have racks and racks of outboard gear.
Sure. So,
you're carting in all these racks of outboard stuff, and that still is very limiting because, on a digital desk, you can have all those things available on every channel. In order to do that with an analog desk, you would need a truckload of racks, and I mean a literal truckload of racks. So I think that, the trade-off for me, but, it's the artist's call, really, at the end of the day. If the artist says, no, it's going to be on an analog desk, and that's going to be the way it is, but that's the way it is,
Yeah.
So, this is a modern digital desk, and you can see here, I've got parametric EQ. I've got, all kinds of cool stuff on board. Here we can see a little picture of Clang, which is basically 3D monitor mixing, I mean, so much stuff lives under the hood in this thing. It is mind numbing,
Wow.
what a modern digital desk can do. And of course, we looked at this, but this is the types of DSPs we can find in modern amplifier systems now. We can have amplifier systems where it's multiple amplifiers. These are 3-4 channel amps. That's 12 channels of amplification. And we can have these incredible drive systems that link multiples of these racks together via these network ports. And it's just incredibly mind-numbing what these modern systems can do from where we came from, So
Yeah, wow. The evolution of our signal processing is really, you think about it, we've been 70 years maybe?
More than that. Electro Voice, for example, was founded in 1927. So
Oh.
they're going to be 100 years old in a few years.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah. And I mean, it didn't take long. I mean, and obviously they weren't the first company to make a microphone, So it didn't take long from even, when we started making microphones and transducers, which would be microphones and speakers, or telephones. When we started reproducing and storing audio, I think anybody who heard spoken word and then heard it played back on a wax cylinder said, that's really cool, because we could never do that before, but it doesn't sound right, And so ever since then, there's been the pursuit of perfection. I think it was, if I remember correctly, I think it was Memorex that used to say, is it real or is it Memorex?
Yep, I remember that commercial.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kids Google it. Anyway, so
I mean, I remember my parents talking about that. Yeah, I don't remember.
yeah, that's what it was. Totally was.
Yeah, that's what it was. Memorex? What is Memorex? I don't know.
Yeah, boy, my son was helping my dad go through some old stuff today, and there's stories that just wouldn't be good for the show. But I just anyway, the generational gap. But obviously what we want is the pursuit of right, and with the artistic sound, you can get into all kinds of musical expression where we've started to create artificial sounds, where we've used signal processing to create sounds that wouldn't exist in the normal natural world.
Right.
And that's okay too. So it's not even a matter of trying to make it accurate. It's about making something that didn't exist before at all. So, and I think in the real world, probably for me, I don't really want you to hear my gates. I don't really want you to hear my EQ. I want the sound to sound good, but I don't want you to say, oh, it sounds like there's an EQ on that,
Sure.
Because then it's not right, I want it to be transparent, and I want my whole system to be transparent. I want the experience that you get as a listener to be a positive one and not a fake one, know? Or it is fake, but I don't want you to know that.
Exactly, yeah. I'm trying to make it, using technology to make it sound natural, even though it takes a lot of technology to make it sound that way.
Yeah, if you're 200 feet from the stage, it still should sound like the singer is sitting in your row, I mean, best of our abilities, to overcome physics.
And that's where that big board, and as we've done with we've talked about array speakers and speaker placement, and that's where all that technology comes together to make that happen.
Yeah, we have some of the best technology now. I mean, so much better than, big touring bands in the 70s or 80s had, and we have, great artists, great instruments, great preamps, great consoles, great speakers, FIR filters creating this great linearity. I told an intern one time, I said, if it doesn't sound right, it's my fault. Everything else is right. So if the problem would be me, and it's the reality, right? We've got all the tools to do our jobs really well.
So let's hit a couple of questions here, and then we'll be wrapping things up here in just a little bit, because the guys are going to be coming up with the Tuesday Night Music Show in a little while. So you were showing some DBX units that are basically the DSP. They can do a lot of different processing. And one of the big questions that a lot of people have, or DJs have, is that, okay, do I need, with my modern sound system, let's just stick with our EVs. I've got my EVs there. Do I need to have an external sound processing unit with today's modern speakers?
Well, we established at the symposium that this show has turned into a drinking game. If you're new,
Yeah, yeah, they did mention that.
sorry for your liver. Every time I say the words "it depends," you're supposed to take a drink, and this is one of those "it depends" moments. I think that if you were to ask the folks at Electro Voice, should I have a drive rack or something external to my ETX, I think they would tell you no. I think if you were to ask me, I think I would tell you no. That the necessary processing lives inside that speaker. Where this becomes an "it depends" moment is when you get into things like the analog compressor, the 2066 or whatever, and if it's something you're going for with the sound, where it's an artistic thing, yeah, maybe, yeah, maybe, and the ETX does not have a 31 band EQ. It has, I think, a 3-band parametric with limited functionality. So an EQ might not be a bad thing, so maybe, but by and large, understanding our target audience here for the show, probably not.
So let's just talk about that EQ for a second. What would the benefit of having a 30-band EQ be for those of us who haven't touched an EQ in 25 years?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's not to make a smiley face. That's for sure. Let's just start right out of the gate here. It's not making a smiley face.
That was always my reminder to smile.
That gets into like some old studies of the equal loudness curve, which was an expansion of the work done by Fletcher and Munson, which actually were telephone engineers. And they, we looked at the human hearing sensitivity on day one of the audio symposium and why that exists, why the loudness buttons exist. But EQs essentially exist to equalize things, to maybe get rid of a frequency that is overbearing in the space, or maybe to boost a frequency that might be a little bit lacking. Typically that is to compensate for the room though, and not for the loudspeaker. The engineers have already taken care of that in the loudspeaker. If you measure the loudspeaker, it should be pretty flat. So then we're looking at room things, but be very careful too, not to try to chase room modes with EQ. If it's a reflection and it's a waves colliding, you're not going to fix it with an EQ. So it's just sort of a fact of nature. So I think the takeaway here, at risk of sounding dismissive, and I certainly don't mean to sound dismissive or condescending or whatever, but I'm a nerd. I speak nerd. I don't speak nice. Is to say, if you don't know, then you probably don't need it. Sure. If you don't know how to EQ properly, it can do more harm than good. But that is not to say don't, because there's over 200 shows we've done, John, and I'm sure we've touched on EQ, and I think it would be great to dive into and learn. And then at some point you might say, that might be just a ticket. I use an EQ every show. It's also built into my console, so I don't have to tote an extra one. I pull up a EQ that's routed to my outputs, and I EQ every time.
So you're changing it based on the room is really what the driving factor is.
Yeah, because I'm not changing it based on my speakers. My speakers don't change. My speakers did not change. I use the presets the manufacturer set, and I leave them alone because they're right. You don't want to mess in those, and you really can't even. You'd have to do some serious hacking. But the room changes all the time, and so different characteristics of different rooms. I wanted to kind of bring it back so that the rig sounds nice and flat, where I can then build my mix without having to build every channel against the room, fix the rig to the room, and then I can go work on my input channels, and shape those as I want them to be. Same would be for a DJ. You don't have so much with your input channels because it's pre-recorded, but fix the rig to the room, and then you can adjust, your mic as you want it and your playback channels as you want them, and but then everything's going to sound right in the room.
And that obviously, if you are comfortable and know what you're doing, it can be a huge benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. They're there for a reason. That's why I wanted to say it's an "it depends" moment.
Very much so. Got a question here, asking about with a DJ controller. We've talked about this, where we're plugging a DJ controller into a mixer, a larger audio mixer board, whatever, that type of situation. Because of the mixer board having more capability for processing, does this make that argument that that's a good thing that a person should be doing on a regular basis, instead of going from the DJ controller just to our speakers, but going into that mixing board so we can have more processing capability?
I think so. I don't think there's a right or wrong here. You know, if you're not doing it, I don't think that makes you a bad DJ. You know, I mean, I think that that's one of the cool things about what we do is it's artistic and it's expressive, but I think it does give you, as you said, a lot more control, tends to have better mic preamps, gives us the ability to, you know, shape and contour that sound in a way a little bit that in a way that DJ consoles as of yet don't do. So yeah, I like it. And that was a fairly recent show we just did. Go back and look it up.
Yeah, it's a few weeks ago. Yep.
Yep. You know, we talk about the pros and cons, you know, but I think there's more pros than cons by a good margin.
Somebody was asking about with the Everse 8 and using a EQing an Everse 8 for using a lapel microphone. Is there anything special that would need to be done with that over any other type of equalization, I suppose, or other connections?
Well, the Everse 8 does have that parametric EQ that we saw, and lapels are awful. You know, I mean, they are what they are, right? There's an old joke. You know who invented the lapel, right?
No.
Satan. So, you know, I mean, you know, they are what they are. I don't like them and nobody likes them, but, you know, when you want something that clips on a shirt, and that's what you get, you know, and equalization is necessary. It is absolutely necessary to make a lapel work in a live sound reinforcement space. Recording doesn't really matter. You know, you're not really worried about feedback and that sort of thing, you know. So, but when we're using a lav for sound amplification, that's a challenge. And I would use the parametric that's built into the Everse. And of course, if you have an external parametric on a console or something, well, that's even easier.
Sure. Then you into the console and then off you go.
Yeah, chances are though, if you're carrying an Everse, you don't, because the Everse is built to be, you know, portable, battery powered. You can carry it in one hand to a beach, and you got everything you need in a box.
And really with a lav, and they talked a little bit about the high pass filter on a microphone channel. That would really almost be a mandatory thing with the lav microphone, I would guess.
To me, it's a mandatory thing for every mic. You know, but definitely a lav. Get rid of a lot of that low frequency rumble, you know, yeah, definitely. But I pass every vocal mic, I think.
Sure.
You know, maybe some exceptions. Well, still a high pass, but where you'd roll it off, you know, Richie from the Oak Ridge Boys, you know, the Luna Prophet guy.
Yeah, he's right there.
That one's way down there. You know,
He's
that
down
one's
there.
way down there. He's hitting down to like 50 hertz or something crazy. I don't know. I looked at it one time, but you know, working with those guys getting just about a month from today, actually. So
Nice.
love those guys. They're just super great. So much fun to work with. But anyways, yeah, you know, I'll check then. I'll see how low he gets, but everybody else gets a high pass way up there somewhere, you know, around 100 to, you know, between 80 and 120, depending on who it is.
And let's since you're talking about that, he has such a low voice. Is there a lot of modification, or I should say processing, you need to do to a voice like that to enhance that lowness of his tonality? Or is it just he has been gifted that voice and you just need to stand back and just let it go?
Yeah, there's nothing fake about his voice. I mean, it's a gift, you know, and I mean, obviously every channel is processed appropriately for the mix, but there's not a ton going on there. Basically, just let him have at it. You know, it's amazing. I think he's 80 something now and he's still got it. And, you know, it's just a marvel every time I have the privilege of working with him. So just stand in awe, you know, because there's very few people. I mean, that's a voice of a generation. That's when it's gone, you know. So
Digital processing from speaker company to speaker company. Is the digital processing very similar in quality, or the processors, are they similar in quality?
just gonna say no and stop there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we had some discussion about that. There are variations from line to line within the same company, and then of course when you go to other different companies, they're using, in many cases, their own proprietary technology to do what they do.
Yeah, everybody's building their own mousetrap, you know, and everybody, you know, I mean, there's always a series of compromises that go into engineering, right? You know, development time, component cost, blah, 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 you know. So there's just no way to say they're all the same, though. Not even close, you know. Some are really great. Some are absolute trash. and there's a lot in between.
Sure.
So.
All right. That sounds good. Ben, I think we're going to wrap things up here. We are at the end of our time tonight, and the guys are coming up here next.
Voice made it.
Yeah, they did. I was wondering about that when you were starting to, because right away it's like, oh, you're getting a little raspy on us for the first couple of minutes of the show.
You know, our beloved marketing director, Kat, today was in a meeting with me and her and another person, and she said, how is it when you lose your voice, you get like a, she didn't say sexy. I'll insert that word. She definitely did not say it.
Yeah, I know.
So I know you meant it though, Kat. I know you meant to say it. She said, you get like a sexy, gravelly voice. I could go record a record and people would buy it. And she goes, when I lose my voice, I sound like Minnie Mouse. So, take that. I got the sexy, gravelly voice.
Yeah, they got that.
I don't know if she watches this show, but I know I will know tomorrow if she did.
Somebody's probably going to be messaging you. You need to watch the last 65 seconds of the show.
That's right. I could sing a little song, just get that raspy, sexy voice on record.
Yeah, that'd be it. And you could use some signal processing or not. Just that.
My voice needs more than signal processing. My voice, there isn't enough signal. I mean, even if I had my voice, I can't sing. So.
Matt says you could record some R&B bangers tonight with the voice.
There you go. Let her rip. Let her rip, baby.
That's good, man. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for being with us tonight. If you have any questions on anything, or you're looking to maybe add something to your show, you can give the guys at NLFX Pro, NLFXPro.com. Go out there and they'll connect you up with something if you need it. And if you don't, they're going to tell you. That's one of the cool things. I just had a conversation with someone, and they're like, you know what, I really appreciate calling Ben, is because there's times where he'll say, you really don't need it.
Just being honest.
And it happens. It happens.
I work for you. I don't work for the companies. They don't give out, they might give out a prize. I might get a little crystal plaque or something if we sell enough stuff, but I give a crap about that. It just goes and sits on a shelf with all the other 30 or 40 crystal plaques. I work for you. You're the one who pays me. So, and when I mean you, I mean the customer.
Yeah, and they definitely appreciate that. It's kind of a cool thing, is when you're talking to folks and how they appreciate that genuine concern for their businesses and such. So again, DJNTV.com/chill. The guys will be in the Tuesday night chat here. Brian, I saw him in the room, and some of the others are going to be joining, and they'll talk and record a session, and then after that, they'll be talking music until late into the night, and you can join them out there in that Zoom room. So jump out there and do that. And I think we'll be back again, next week, and then we may have a week off or something in there, or maybe I have to have Dan, because I think we have section track meets coming up. It's that time of the year. So we'll figure it out.
It's getting to be that time of year, yeah.
Yeah, and we're at summer.
Schedule starts to get a little squirrely too, but
we'll figure something out. We'll keep working on it. So, they're going to talk about Joe Cocker tonight. Oh, that'll be kind of fun.
There you go.
That would be fun.
First guy to play at First Avenue. There was people took pictures with the Joe Cocker star at First Avenue. So. Nice. Yeah, that would be. I'm looking forward to catching that show from after the guys are done with it. So, everyone, have yourself a great night, and we will catch you next time. Good night, everybody.